G'day, guys, and welcome back to the Sore Loser Show. Today, I am talking to Emile Janicot. He is a man among men. He has emceed events like Bowl-a-Rama, the X-Games, just to name a couple. He has toured Australia and a lot of the world with the company he co-founded, Blood Wizard. He is a surfer, a snowboarder, a skateboarder, a dad, a skateboard collector, and I am stoked for you guys to be watching today. Let's jump in. All right, so stoked to be talking to you today, man. Like, it has been so long, and like, for people that don't know, you're involved in skateboarding, surfing, snowboarding. You're a bassist. You are a founder of a skate company.
All of the above.
And not to mention an MC of skateboard contests and events in general. So,
Sure.
So why don't you fill everybody in on anything I've missed and fill me in on anything I've missed as well?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you. So happy to be here. Thank you, Damo Kennedy. You and I have known each other over about 15 years now, even though I haven't seen you in about 4 to 5 years now since pre-COVID.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, my name is Emile Janicot, and originally from Lake Tahoe, Grass Valley, California. Now living in Sacramento, California. And I'm a proud dad of one, my son Ari, and as Damo mentioned, I am a co-founder of Blood Wizard Skateboards. We are in our 14th year now, which is crazy. Still doing it. I'm also a professional MC. I've traveled the world doing live MC events for all kinds of stuff: action sports, corporate meetings, parties, weddings, all kinds of stuff. I've worked for the X-Games, for Red Bull, for Feast. I've done the Bondi Bowl-a-Rama many different times, and I also did the Australian Bull Riding Championships a couple of times down there. And surfing, yeah, I'm kind of landlocked. I live in Sacramento, but I'm still a little bit of a surfer. And so just been doing that and all kinds of different events that I do all over the world. And yes, I'm also a bassist in a band called Last Season and another one called Lonely Kings. And we've been doing it for a long time, over 20 years now. We just actually had band practice last night. So it was pretty good. And behind me, you see part of my collection of skateboards here in the garage. I've been collecting for about 25 years here, many different boards from all kinds of different companies, some companies that don't even exist anymore, like these two right here from Adrenaline Skateboards in the late 90s, early 2000s. I was the team manager for that. And, skateboard companies come and go, but just still happy to be here, skateboarding when I can.
I see a Vision Jinx in the background there too. So yeah, your collection goes back a bit.
That does. Here, let me kind of give you guys there's the Jinx. I got some Creature. This one, old school Agent Orange board. There's a Gons, Dinosaur Jr. And this one is pretty cool right here. I got this one from your boy right there, Russell Grundy. That's a Grundy's board.
Oh, cool.
Right. And then I also got, he doesn't ride him for anymore, but that's a Jesse Noonan when he was on Santa Cruz, the very first Croc Lobster board.
Oh, sick.
Yeah. So I got some Aussie boards, that I've been working with for a few years, and
keeping it up.
And as a collector, sometimes you sell them, sometimes you buy them, sometimes you trade them. I've had some really nice ones. I had a holy grail for years. I had an original Metallica Pusshead Zorlak board.
Oh, wow.
I had it for about 15 years. I bought it for $100. I had it about 15 years, and I sold it for $2,800.
Wow.
And I was bummed to let it go, but I needed money at the time, and it went to a really good home, this collector in Oregon who had all the other Zorlak boards. So it went really good, and he was like, if you ever make a lot of money, I'll sell it back to you. So that's kind of cool to like as a collector. I know you're a collector as well. To let you let some go and then you bring some back to your collection.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's important if you are letting something go, especially of that kind of significance, that it goes to a good home, like you said, you know? Um, yeah, there's nothing worse than, I see people all the time who are just in it to flip boards and make a
Yeah.
profit. And man, I can't agree with it. I understand people need to make money, but when the intent behind it is seems a little greedy to me, it's
Yeah.
always better for me to see people, like who really want that board, like it
Yeah.
means something to them.
Yeah, the guy I sold it to had followed me forever. We've been buddies for a long time, and it's weird, because like when I first started collecting skateboards, they were only worth what they were worth,
Yeah,
$50 to $100, and
yeah.
then now with all the vintage stuff, when eBay was invented and Mercari and all these apps that you can sell stuff on, then like the Pal Peraltas, the '80 Santa Cruz boards, all the early Vision boards, I mean now they go for crazy exorbitant amount of money. That one Tony Hawk board that he did the 900 on, which
Oh
is just
yeah.
a birdhouse board, an 8.5 birdhouse board. It's like nothing special, but that board went for $1.2 million. I mean,
Wow.
for a skateboard. I mean, you know what I mean? What are you going to do about that? It's just, but as a collector, I just find joy in it just to like, there's the artists, there's so many different artists all over the world, like that Death Breath board. Make sure you hit the link right here and get that and it's cool, I had a few device boards and stuff, and I have stuff just in storage. I have a few, the dive shop board that was the first
Oh
Bondi.
yeah.
So I have a lot of stuff still in storage, and it's just as far as collecting, it's just been a passion of mine, and just being a part of just trying to stay in skateboarding as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you find that just having that stuff around you is sort of it's a link to skateboarding even when say the weather's bad or something like that and you can't skate, you can always just look up on the wall and there they are.
Well, I'm up here. I got to make sure they're dusted and cleaned every week, and stuff like that. And then I'll constantly go, not constantly, but every week I'll go online. I'll look at eBay. I'll look at Mercari. Look at some of these resell apps and see if there's ones that are actually worth it. And you'll see the guys. You'll see the actual real collectors who price boards that are like a good price and stuff. Then you see the people like you talk about, Damo. The people are gouging just to
Yeah.
try and make money. And I mean, that's cool and whatever. I just don't believe in that for skateboarding because I'm an old school skateboarder. And then you find stuff that, like, the best finds I've ever found have been at like yard sales, garage sales, stuff like that. When it's like, the kid moved out and grandma's had his board in the garage for 40 years. Those are the best finds you get. One, it's got a story behind it. Okay, it's cool. The kid was a skater, this and that. Two, as a collector, you can share that with other collectors. And if you go online on Facebook, and there's a bunch in Australia, boardcollectors.com and stuff. And then you have a connection. You meet people. What kind of boards do you have? And I've met. The biggest collection is in Simi Valley, California, at the skate lab.
Okay.
Yeah, and that guy has like over 70,000 boards or something like that.
Wow.
All the way from the early 50s to today. Any board that comes out that's a collector's, he buys and then puts it up in the skate lab. So check out the skate lab. It's in Simi Valley, California. They have a website.
I'll be sure to check that out.
Yeah,
that's
see,
like
that guy has unicorns. That guy has a couple boards that he's the only one that has them in the world. So it's pretty cool to see those collections. Another big collector is Jeff Ament, the bassist of Pearl Jam. He lives out in Montana, yeah. And, he's a big skater and he helps skate parks get built all over the United States. He's a really, really cool guy. And he obviously has a lot of money to be able to buy boards, but in his garage, he has like some of the very first Dogtown boards. He bought them off like Jim Muir and Mike Muir and all these guys. And
so all hand painted and hand shaped.
And he's like the custodian now. I mean, those boards belong to him, but they belong to skateboarding. There's something
Mm.
that's a part of something of all of us, dude. Like those very, very
Yeah.
first boards, or kind of like, the way I think about it, like, the very first surfers of Australia, like, Mark Richards and Nat and all these guys and Mark Achikbalupo. I mean, some of the surfboards that those guys have that are in some garage up on the Gold Coast, I mean, it
Yeah.
belongs to them, but it belongs to Australian surfing, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that's important to me as a collector, to be able to make those connections with people, not just the board that you own, but that you're a custodian of it and you can kind of pass it on to future generations.
Of course, man. And yeah, that crossover between skateboarding as well, which I don't know, it makes me think that boards that have come out probably since 2000 are not the collectibles that they were in the 80s and 90s, like that, because mass production, like
Yeah,
so many were made that sometimes there's no number
yeah,
on how many of those boards were made. And also that sort of I think it became a little more disposable,
they are.
where people were just like, oh, well, I got a bunch of boards at home. Who cares? I'll throw this in the bushes.
Yeah,
Like it goes into a bin at a skate spot or
yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
Whereas if you look back, like when I started skateboarding, like I would
A
have a
lifetime ago,
thrashed board. Yeah, exactly. Like in the 80s, I would take apart a board that had like 2 inches of tail left,
yeah,
you know,
right. Shit,
and
just
still
like a
keep it.
dagger, right?
Yeah, and still keep it. Still keep
Yeah.
it just
Oh,
just in case. But so I did want to talk about, so speaking of 80s, 90s and now, um about how important you think contests, coming from the point of view of somebody who has been heavily involved in contests globally as an MC and everything else, like just being at them. How important do you think contests are now comparatively to the 80s and, let's say, up until the mid to late 90s?
well, Damo, that's a great question. You bring it up. Like, first of all, in my heart, like, there's no winners and losers in skateboarding.
Mm,
I mean, it's just skateboarding. It's an art form. It's a form of expression. It's a sport. It's a thing that the thing that cannot be named. You know what I mean? Skateboarding transcends so many different genres of people and places and artistic forms and everything. It's hard to categorize that. But what I always think, still doing it, contests, the best thing that I always get out of contests is everybody gets to come together. You get to see your buddies that you haven't seen. You get to meet pros or amateurs that you've only seen in videos or in magazines. You get to see friends that haven't been around, or new spawns, new kids that are coming up, new riders and stuff.
yeah.
And it brings everyone together. Everyone comes to the same, location for that weekend. Friday's practice, Saturday's the contest, Sunday's the finals, and I've done so many. And, one thing that I do take away from that is the camaraderie of skateboarding. It's just, that is
Sure.
so important, like, one guy could win one weekend, or one girl could win one weekend, and the next weekend they get last. It doesn't matter, maybe you're hurt, maybe you're not on. I mean, it matters in, like, when they have the standings or money or stuff like this, Street League and the Pro Stu Tour and all that, and the Olympics and rankings and stuff. Sure, that matters in that, but what really matters is that everyone gets to go, and every skateboarder will tell you this, from the highest pro to the newest newbie, that once you get to a contest, you're all just, there to have a good time and fun, even if,
A
you
hundred
know,
percent.
even if a skater is really competitive and wants to win, that's great too. But what you're there for is to have fun and be reminded that you're just a skateboarder. Chad Muska was just on the Nine Club, a couple weeks ago, and I love him, man. I got to travel with him, in the early jump off building days when my buddy Chris Sen was, riding for a toy machine at the time. And what he always
Yeah.
said is, he's like, it doesn't matter how good you are, if from the very bottom to the very top pro or whatever. If you're a skateboarder, you're a skateboarder. That's what matters. All right. It doesn't matter if you can do all the
Yeah.
tricks or you get paid or not, or your sponsors. What matters is that feeling inside that you just want to, you just want to get out there, rip it, whether it's a curb, a rail, a ramp, a park, a bowl, whatever it is, just a flat piece of ground. That feeling that skateboarders have, surfers, snowboarders, BMXers, kind of action sports, they all kind of have that. But skateboarding is one of the original action sports. And it's like that feeling that you get. I'm getting goosebumps right now of when you just, and you're doing it out there. When you look at you going out there with your curbs, I mean, you're just riding a 3-inch curb, but
that's
that you
the
find.
thing I'm finding is that it's a time machine for me. It is really taking me back to those days when I started skating on curbs, but not just for that reason, but the feeling that you get of just hanging out with mates in some place you're not particularly wanted, and just having the most fun.
Either. It was
exactly.
It was made for keeping a car, safe or whatever.
Exactly.
So back to your original question there, the contests in the 80s, and 90s were like, that's kind of when I first started emceeing and doing production and stuff. They had so much more, money and, infrastructure then. The contests were huge. I mean, and mostly it was vert contests back then.
Yeah,
okay?
Of course.
Pipes, all right? When Tony Hawk versus Christian Hosoi versus, all these riders. There's too many to name, Jeff Grosso, rest in peace, and a lot of guys out there, and so those contests were like, it was like a rock concert. It was just this huge, massive thing, with all this money and sponsors and, cars and girls and all this crazy stuff. And then in the 90s, when the street scene exploded, everyone really getting into that, it made a whole difference of, flat bills and big pants and little wheels and then, skateboarding on rails and taking it to the streets. And vert kind of died or went down and stuff. And the contests, they still were big, but they weren't as big, but they were still very important because it shaped a whole generation of street skaters that now has become its own, street and vert, they're all skateboarders, but have had a division kind of since the 90s. Are you a vert skater, a street skater? You know what I mean? And I'll tell you what, they're both equally as hard. Okay. Both styles of, skating are just as hard to, train for, become good at. And those contests kind of dwindled in the 90s. And then again, just like anything, petroleum or whatever happens, the stock market or stuff, kind of ebbs and flows, and, for me, I've announced and been production for contests where there were as little as 100 people up to 65,000 people when I was doing the X-Games. And it's just massive. It's like this huge production, millions of dollars to do it. And it's like, I would sit back and be like, are you kidding me? Like the last Bondi Bowl-a-Rama, I mean, there was 5,000 people right around that little bowl. And you just step back and realize, this is just skateboarding. We're just trying to have a good time out here. But, you got Tony Hawk and Bucky Lasik and Steve Caballero in the Bondi Bowl, and that's then you guys got Lachlan Abbott and, Jed Fuller and, a lot of these Keegan Palmer, a lot of these Aussie kids who are just amazing now. They grew up and they're just in the Olympics and it's massive. So back to your original question, the genesis and the the kind of the production side of it, skateboarding contests from the 80s and 90s, it's like just peak and valley, huge and then smaller and then huge and smaller. But one thing, like I said earlier, that I take away from it is just the feeling that you get. Okay, no matter who won the contest, no matter if it was, big or small, the feeling of that it was still a contest and still that, guys and girls were there skating and having a good time and creating those bonds. And you got to think about the people who went to the contest, who aren't skaters, the parents, the little brothers, the kids, the people who were maybe not even skaters at all. And then they became skaters after that
Yeah, of
because they
course.
were so like, think about when the Bones Brigade first came to Sydney, right? They had that ramp
Oh,
down
yeah.
there. Like, I mean, I saw that picture and they, inspired a whole generation of skateboarders by just putting on a little small contest or a demo right there. I mean, that,
Yeah,
exploded.
100%.
Or somebody like Lee Ralph. Okay. Like he came
Mm.
out of New Zealand, like this mongoloid, modern day caveman, but he inspired a generation of New Zealand skateboarders. You know what I mean? And that
Yeah.
feeling of like a demo or a contest through the 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s. What's great is some of these cities that skateboard contests go to, then when they leave, they're gone on Sunday night or Monday morning. Everyone flies to their next location and drives away. What's left is that feeling of, oh man, all those kids who go to school or high school or college or back to their jobs, back to, the grind the next day. Oh, this weekend, the contest. Oh my God. And what you remember
Yeah.
about that, is a huge inspiration for skaters around the world.
Yeah. And I think it's, to an extent, my feelings on it is that at the very least, those grassroots contests that are going on are almost more important than the big events at the moment, because that's
Absolutely.
where the local kids are going to get, that inspiration that you were talking about from, because they're going to see people that they see in the street every
Yeah.
day. They go to school with, doing something amazing that they're going to gravitate towards. And so, like, you mentioned Bowl-a-Rama in there, and that started as a very grassroots
Yeah, it was
contest,
tiny. I
like,
went to the second or third one, and it was like with Chris Sen, and there was like 40 people there. You know what
yeah,
I mean?
that's it,
No
standing room
cameras,
only.
nothing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then it monstered out,
Yeah.
became such a popular event, like arguably Australia's largest competition, regular competition that it's seen. I mean, we got Belco Bowl Jam, which is the longest running.
That one's like, dude, that one's like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, dude. That one, there's like no rules, and it's that one bowl in that parking lot. I mean, that
Yeah.
contest is like, there's not many like contests. I've been to every different contest in the world, and that one is special because there's no fence, there's no security, there's nothing. Everyone just craps up on that bowl, and people are just flying out of there and just wild in the streets, and there's like no rules, and it's like
Yeah, well,
that
speaking of
contest
wild,
mean a lot for Australia and for the world.
yeah. Well, speaking of wild in the streets, so the ACT government has been, like, over the last few years, allowed the guys from Belco Bowl Jam to
Yeah,
take over street spots in
yeah, I
Canberra
saw
where
that.
they have contests, and that's 100% legit. They can do that, nobody's coming along and shutting it down. Like, it's go for it. And I find that so amazing, and I can't think of anywhere in the world that would allow you just to go into a public space. Like, there's shit going on at the library there.
Yeah.
you know?
They did that,
Like,
back in the early 2000s. X-Games did a couple things like that, and the Do Tour did a couple things like that, where they would have
okay.
the big contest with the ramps and everything like that, all set up. And then on the Friday or the Monday, they would go to an actual street spot like a rail or ledges. They did it in Love Park in Philadelphia. They did it at
Oh,
City
cool.
Hall in San Francisco, and they would like let the skaters do that. But that is special permit only, crazy different security and stuff. I mean, the U.S. obviously
Yeah.
has, a lot more different rules than Australia, but there's been a few of those, and there needs to be more of those. There needs to be more, like, not lawlessness, but kind of just, letting skateboarding be. It doesn't have to be this pre-packaged thing. It can be just, organic and
Mm.
natural, and just let the riders go out and kind of do what they want. Even if it's not a contest, they can just be, judged on just, not even performance, but how it is and how that day is going. And those type of events, like you talked about, Damar, are really important, not just for skateboarding and not just for the crowd, but for the riders. They're not pressured into a time, a timed run, a score.
Yeah.
They're just doing it like they're doing it, it's out on the streets, and that really creates freedom for skaters to become who they are.
That's it. And I think the public have to realize that that's where skateboarding comes from. If you see somebody in the park event in the Olympics, well, they're not only skating skate parks their whole life. They're out in the streets, and that's where you're getting a greater skill set, because you have, in my opinion anyway, because you have natural obstacles that you don't find in the skate park. So you got to use your head a little more. You got to sort the spot out, like putting something down on the landing or the takeoff, or just navigating foot traffic sometimes. It's a different animal.
And like spots like you skate, like the curb stuff. I mean, like I said, it's not all the skate parks. I've been to Bateau Bay, I've been all these, and they're beautiful parks, but there's no cracks. Everything's so smooth. The run up's perfect, where it makes it easier, and it's great. I like the ease of that. But rough street spots or just natural spots that occur in the world, you have to become a better skater. You have to adapt to those, like you were talking about, and being that, it makes the art form a little bit more enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's back to sort of skate parks and contests. There's a community event which is gaining some gusto at the moment, down at Bondi again. Bringing back the bowl comps down there, and it's going to be honoring. It's like a memorial for our friend, R.I.P. Sasha Steinhorst. I just wanted to touch on Sasha's influence on contests, basically, and everything he brought from your perspective, because I mean, you had a lot more contact with him throughout the year than I obviously did. I mean, I got some great memories of Sasha, but very limited to a time frame when he was in Bondi. What's your kind of
Well,
what's
I know
your
that
take?
since I was 17 years old, man. I miss him every day, man. I miss him. Cancer got him, and cancer has touched all our lives, dude. I don't know one person who hasn't lost a person to cancer, and he went peacefully, so we were happy with that. But he showed me the way. He was working for World Cup. He worked for the X-Games. He worked for Disney, ESPN, Red Bull, Feast. He worked for all these companies, and he was also a businessman, and he butted heads with a lot of skate executives and even some of the former employers and stuff. I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but he gave many skaters, productions people, DJs, MCs, TV broadcast people, not just skaters. He brought a lot of teams together to do events all over the world, and being able to be kind of at that top of that pyramid, was, I know, like a dream for him. I know later in his career, he wanted to be part of he was looking, before the cancer got him, he was looking to transition into Moto F1 and stuff like that. He wanted to be a team manager for motorcycles and F1 cars. And, he knew a lot of people traveling around. I mean, we call it a Rolodex, but I looked at his iPhone one day and he had 5,000, numbers, where I had 500. I mean, the guy was just very well connected in any country that he, visited. And he brought a lot of people together, and, there's a lot of things to say when skateboarding mixed with business. Okay. When you have one of these contests, there's got to be money. Okay. People got to get paid. You got to do this, you got to do that. And sometimes there's some bitter tastes that happen because, business and skateboarding, it mixes, but sometimes it doesn't mix well. And
Sure.
he was aware of that, and I know that there was some people who didn't like the way he did things, but when you have it takes a small army to put on any contest, okay, 10 to 20 to 40 to
Yeah.
70 to 80 people, and being able to keep that organized and being able to do that takes a lot of gusto and a lot of balls, as they say, in Aussie.
I think
you know
not to mention that you're also dealing with all of the riders. You're dealing with skaters, man. Like, and skaters
Dorothy
don't like to be told
Garcia.
what to do.
Yeah, so I mean, I love and miss him dearly, dude. And we all do. And I'm really happy that you guys are going to be able to, have that. And I hope that it gets broadcast or like saved on something. And my advice is like
Yeah,
make a DVD. I don't know if they do DVDs anymore, but make some sort of recording that people who can't make it are able to watch that at a later date. And just like
yeah,
and my advice also is like, at some point in the contest, everybody take a knee and do like a 5 seconds of silence, just like, for our fallen brother, and
that'd be nice,
it's
man.
great that it's a memorial for him, but skateboarding's lost many, many different riders from all over the world, and
A
getting
hundred
older will
percent.
continue to do so. So well, the way we celebrate, all these skaters, guys and girls, is to keep skating, is just to keep the dream alive and just keep going
Yeah,
on trips and keep going and just keep skating as much as you can and as well as you can. Life hammers get in the way. I mean, you have kids, you have
yeah,
family, you have a job, you got to make money, you got to do this, but trying to bring everyone together and have that camaraderie, like I talked about earlier in this interview, is really important. And Sash did a lot. I know there's a lot of different people who brought that event to light. Chad from Frontside Events and all
mm,
the committees at New South Wales, Nick, Dean Turkett, yourself, I mean Corbin Harris, Jed's Cafe in Bondi. I mean,
yeah.
there's a ton of different Mick Mulhall. I mean, all these people. There's a ton of different
I mean, the
people to,
the
you know,
Beach Road Hotel
yeah,
accommodated everybody. Just gave up all their hotel rooms.
amazing
Yeah.
nights on that roof, dude. Like, you know what I mean? We had some great nights on that. Set off fireworks and drinking and just like, I mean, times seemed a little simpler back then. It was a little easier to do stuff. Now,
Yeah,
things cost more. The permits are more. Everything is a little more difficult to do, especially the world we live in now. Okay, you know what I mean? It was
yeah,
a little easier
100%.
back then, but you know
Yeah.
what I mean. And that feeling, I've been to over 500 skate parks and spots all over the world. And you know what? That Bondi Bowl is special, man. Not just the beach of Bondi
Mm,
and the surfing and the vibe of the 70s and beautiful people walking around and all of that, but that bowl, I mean, it started with the mini ramp there. I mean, right? The mini ramp
yeah.
was there for
Well,
years, and
the
you
it
know,
it started with the vert ramp, and
mm,
then
the vert ramp.
the
That's
mini ramp.
right.
Yeah, but
And then,
yeah,
I
and
mean, they dug that bowl, and then when that bowl first came out, I know it's gone through a couple different phases with the new skate park behind there and stuff. But I mean, when I first saw that in a video, I mean, this was pre cell phone. I mean, we were like, oh
mm,
my God, we got to get to Australia. I mean, that was like, that was just like a thing. That was like it was like a pilgrimage. It
yeah,
was like kind of like the Nude Bowl or the Combi Bowl or
yeah.
something. I mean, the Bondi Bowl isn't that big. It isn't some super gnarly giant skate park, but the
No,
location and the feeling that you get of just being in Bondi, just that neighborhood and cruising all around there. I mean, that place is just, it's a piece of magic in this world and will continue to be so, and that it's always, supported. Skateboarding is very, very important.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think the atmosphere in general during the month of February in
Yeah.
Bondi, it was a different vibe. It reminded me as someone who grew up in that suburb and watched it go through all of its changes, that that those people can still, like, people like me can still take over an entire suburb and just
Sure.
have fun and show people how to have fun without, you know causing well, too much trouble.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm sure it pissed a lot of people off. But yeah, that was just a solid month of
Yeah.
fun and catching
I
up
mean, there
with
was art
friends and
shows.
that camaraderie.
Yeah, there was all kinds of stuff. I remember going with you and Dean and Andres and Jim and John Parmeter and a lot of these skaters that I had just met. That Aussies.
Yeah,
Wade and all these guys. And there was the art show every night and Love and Guts and
yeah.
there was concerts and but Damo, things can't last forever. There was like a good 7 or 8 years
No,
there
that's true.
thing. And, I remember the last one that I went to. I mean, there was like bleachers and there was like a 2 hour line just to sit in the bleachers and not enough
Yeah,
bathrooms. And cops were like trying to deal with traffic jams. And, it exploded there. And I'm sure the city council was like, it's gotten too big, basically. You know
yeah,
what I mean? There's only so much space on the grassy knoll. You know what I mean?
yeah,
There's
yeah,
only so much space for that. But hanging with guys like, like Skunk and Mick Mulhall and all the original, like, Aussie skaters, man, that was just a treat for me too. And I know, Australia is not as big as America, but it's still a really big country. And you guys living,
Mhm.
a lot of people live in Melbourne or up on the Goldie or in Sydney, and getting the Aussie skaters together for that weekend was for me to
Yeah,
witness that, just like all the mate, you know what I mean? Just all the
yeah.
all the camaraderie between you guys, was really special. And that,
Well, that was the
it'll be
thing.
recreated.
It was.
Those were amazing times.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And it has to start somewhere. Like you said, I think it did blow up into a monster that had to explode at some
Yeah,
stage.
yeah,
But I think with what Ty and Shane and Bondi skate riders in general are doing now with this grassroots contest, sort of getting a bit of gusto and stuff like that, no
yeah,
real plans to make it huge with
yeah,
grandstands or anything, is just sort of, it seems like a do-over on those
sure.
days for a new generation of skaters,
That's true.
because
I
like I
mean,
think Bowl-a-Rama went for 14 years.
yeah,
Like it
and
was crazy.
and then COVID hit, and we didn't do it for 5, 6, 7 years. And so you're right; it's a new
Yeah.
generation. I mean, some of the kids who are going to be in that contest now were like 5 years old, 6 years old. Now they're like 13,
Mm.
14, 15 years old, and just ripping. I mean, I remember George
Yeah.
Richards when I first went there, and Keegan Palmer. They were like little 10-year-old kids. Now they're grown
Yeah.
men, dude, and they're just like insane, dude, like shredding, dude.
Yeah.
Luke
George
also.
is like 6'4".
Yeah, I mean, all these guys, they get, and like you said, Damo, it's, as, getting old's a drag, but what we can do as older skaters, with our experiences, just pass it on to the new generation. Skateboarding doesn't owe
Yeah.
us anything, and we don't owe it anything except,
Mm.
respect. But, and, they've learned that, but to watch the new generation, man, it's so insane. Like when you and I started, we saw the McTwist, we saw the, this,
Yeah.
and then we saw the 900, and like now bowl skating and street skating is so far above the levels. I just see videos every day, and you're like, how are these dudes doing it? And guys like Bob and Elliot Sloan and
Mm.
Tom Shar, dudes who are just progressing and just keeping the limit. And then you guys like, you guys got like Noonan and Lockie Abbott and Keegan Palmer and George Richards, and these guys are the
Yeah.
new generation, and I really enjoy watching that, man. I'm not trying to be some grumpy old man. My generation used to do that. I used to flip the bar. You have to let it, skateboarding's always going to progress, and you have to, you got to get on board or you're going to get left behind, dude. And, I think that
Yeah.
the new generation also, which I like to, has a lot of respect for the older guys and older girls. Like, right on. Maybe that we weren't as good as them. Maybe the level wasn't as high, but it's really just great to see them grow and progress. And Australian skateboarding is just, dude, it's just never going to stop. It's on the way up, man, and it's never
That's
going to
it.
peak. It's never going to plateau. There's going to be new generations, and places like Portside, you know what I mean? Places like Bateau Bay and
Yeah.
all that. You guys have, when skateboarding was first hanging in Australia, you had all these random parks. What's the one right outside of Sydney? The one that's the big Five Dock. Okay, with that crazy
Oh yeah,
thing, with the thing. All right. I mean, that was it. And now it's like there's so many amazing parks and great spot that skateboarding is just going to keep exploding in Australia. But bringing it down to where you have these guys doing this grassroots contest really for the fun of it. It's not so much about the result or the prize money or this. It's really about to bring people together, and have a
yeah.
good weekend and, have some drinks and chill on the beach and watch the new generation rip because those moments that can never be taken away.
Yeah, yeah, very well said, man. And I think also it's important to acknowledge the people putting on these contests, like Ty Colling and Shane Serena,
Absolutely.
for example, because there is a lot of work in the background that goes into it. Not as much as like what Sasha used to do, like a full time job
No,
kind of thing, but still a lot of work goes into it. And for people to see a contest on the day, they go, well, this just kind of looks thrown together or anything, but it really isn't. It's
absolutely.
like, yeah, there's months of preparation that go into it, especially when it comes down to wanting to offer something like for prize money and trying to get sponsors on board
Yeah,
in these economic times where
it's
where
tough.
money's tight.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And also, like, we kind of mentioned earlier, like this, as a production manager too on contests, it's like you got a 1 day event, it takes 2 months to prepare. So that's
Yeah.
usually about the timeline, about 2 months to prepare for 1 day. So, like being out there and, you just have this, you start with an idea and then you have this list. It's like a computer readout and you got to check everything off the list from, the skaters to
Mm.
the accreditation to the permit to the bathrooms to the trash bags to the food. I mean, the list never ends, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the most important thing that I keep mentioning through this interview is bringing people together. That camaraderie
Yeah.
of, it doesn't matter who wins or who gets what. What matters is everyone's there that weekend and get to headlock your buddy and give your buddy a hug and, people. And also that as an outsider, we're so ingrained in this as skateboarders, but as an outsider, just like a tourist walking by, a Japanese tourist in Bondi, walking by on
Mm.
that Saturday, just happened to be there, and there's this skateboard contest, and they're like, oh my God, they see something they've never seen before, and they see something that will never happen again, as far as like that day, skate contests happen again and again. But those
Yeah.
magic moments of that, will live in Australian skateboarding forever.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And look, thinking back on those days, so much stuff was happening in the periphery as well. Like we had that pool going in St. Ives, and Dean made the documentary about it,
Yeah,
and
I'm
like
in it, dude. I'm
you
in
know,
it. I'm stoked, bro.
you are in it. And I remember, I don't know what happened to it, but I wanted to touch on this real quick. We made a commercial for it, and while I was writing, Dean and I were writing the script for the commercial, which you did the voiceover on.
Yep.
We were just laughing our asses off as we were putting footage and going, okay, what does this relate to? What are we going to say this is? It was like an ad for Sydney Pool Services, basically,
Yeah,
for
right.
anybody who hasn't seen it. But it's gone now off the internet. But I wish
Yeah.
it was still there because there
That's all
was some
right.
real
It'll
funny
live
stuff in it.
forever somewhere. You know what I mean? I had
Yeah,
so much fun
that's
doing
it.
that, and that pool was fun. Like, backyard pools don't last forever. You hit it while you get it. And that's
Yeah, yeah.
and that was great of you and Dean and everyone, Marcel and everyone who put a lot of energy into that. And
Oh,
I
Nick,
have great memories of that
Andreas,
too.
Johnny Rental. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, I indie nose picked that sucker, man. That was like a glory
Did you?
part of my mind. Yeah, bro. I mean, I was lucky, and
That's
for
sick.
you guys, me coming over there, and I remember the first year. I only knew some of the skaters in the contest. I knew Omar and Jeff, and I knew Skunk
Hmm.
from him coming, but I had not met you. I didn't meet Dean. I had Marcel, Tony, all these guys, and you guys just came in and embraced me. You're like, who's this Seppo? Right? And then that's how
Yeah.
I learned the term. And I was like, what is a Seppo? The septic tank yank, right? So he's a
Yeah.
Seppo. But I embraced that, I mean, Americans and Australians have a lot of differences, but we've always, our two countries have always gotten along. Australians love coming to
Yeah.
America. U.S., citizens love going to Australia, and it will continue that way. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
especially the bouncing of ideas with skateboarding and art and music. Some of the best things have come out of
Mm.
Australia. You know what I mean? And those memories that I have of all you guys, John and Noonan and everyone, like, holding us, together and inviting me and Sasha and all the Americans that came over was so refreshing. Because I've been to a lot of
Yeah.
contests in a lot of different countries where they're like, because of the US politics, they're like, Americans suck. And I'm like, dude, I'm not my
Yeah.
government. I'm a skater. I'm, a free citizen. And you have to kind of realize that. But, you guys, especially the Bondi crew, were always so welcoming and so, nice to all of us and also respectful. You guys just let us do what we need to do because I was there to do a job, and I was just
Yeah.
happy to
Yeah.
do
Of
it.
course.
Being a part of that, and it's like, I can't wait to bring my son over there when he's a little older, and we'll keep that dream alive for a long time, for many years.
Yeah, for sure. And like, yeah, I mean, I keep going back to those days, but yeah, and so many good memories. And what you're saying about the two countries, like being somewhat unified through skateboarding and just in general, similar cultures, I
Yeah,
guess. But I think all it would need would be the skateboarding. You know what I mean? Like when
yeah.
everybody came into town, from my perspective, everybody came into town in February. It was a bit annoying because it took forever to get a fucking coffee. But
Yeah. Well, all these random people and all the
yeah,
Americans from other part of Australia coming. All right, not
yeah,
just Americans and skaters. Like, you got people coming from all the way from Darwin and Canberra and all these places.
yeah,
You know what I mean? That were just. I mean, I saw people sleeping in the parking lot that weekend while I'm over in the hotel. I
yeah.
mean, just to, and all the restaurants are full that whole week. Those whole 2 weeks were just, what I mean. And I really hope that it, with this new, even it's a smaller contest, but I really hope that a lot of those feelings, that a lot of those experiences come back to Bondi, especially what happened, a couple months ago or a month ago,
Of
just to
course, yeah,
really, like, just to really, give Bondi a good boost and a good positive feeling that, skateboarding is still, illegal in some places and that, but this
mm,
is just a celebration of bringing everyone together.
yeah,
Australia is a sporting nation, and in skateboarding, you can call it a sport. Really, I think it's an art form, but that it brings all
yeah,
these people together. Not just people from out it, but all you Aussies get together. For it's like your Super Bowl or whatever for a weekend, and it's great.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, and it was one of the from a personal level. I used to take so when I was working in hospitality at the time, and I'd
Yeah,
work all through Christmas and New Year's, and I would take the month of February off. That would
yeah,
just be my time because it got to that point where I was just like I was so looking forward to seeing everybody, and like you say, not just you guys coming over, but everybody from around Australia
yeah,
that I literally hadn't seen since that time last year. And
yeah.
it just became like it's almost a shame that it did get that big because I mean
Yeah.
there's nothing that can
It's
happen
hard to
after that
say.
other than collapse, you know?
Yeah, I mean, not like we talked about before. Nothing lasts forever and stuff. And it's. I don't think it is a shame. It's just like you kind of see the end of it, and then I mean, then COVID hit and all
Mm.
that, and everything was just gone. And now it's kind of
Oh yeah.
been kind of coming back up. I mean, the love for skateboarding and the stoke, none of that changed. All right, that's still the fire's
No,
still lit,
no.
man. The fire's just still burning
Yeah.
bright, but it's really hard when you got to deal with the city council, when you got to get money, when you got to get crews, when you got to do that stuff. You got to, you guys got to start over. So all these guys that are doing that, Tim,
Mm.
and those guys, like, Ty and all those guys, I really have utmost respect for it, because they're basically starting from zero again, and then
Yeah,
you got to
100%.
kind of just go up again, and it's just like, I'm just really happy that you guys can really, bring it back and just be a new part of, kind of watching the new generation come up again. It's important to keep those, that fire
Yeah.
burning.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it will be available if so. I believe there's going to be a live feed of just one
Cool.
static camera,
Yeah.
and that'll be on the Borders YouTube channel. And
Yeah. Cool.
I'll be roaming around with the camera on behalf of Bondi Skate Riders, and just constantly sort of putting stuff up on
And
Instagram if people want to
will
see little
Dean be on the
highlights and
deck in his
stuff.
hockey gear? Will Dean be on the
I
deck in his
hope
hockey gear
so.
taking photos?
I hope so. He's always been a fixture at the local comps and
Absolutely.
Bowl-a-Rama, of course,
Yeah.
taking thousands, literally
Yeah.
thousands of
5,000
pictures a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned COVID, and, the sort of the drop in contests during COVID, because it had to happen. Nobody could go
Yeah.
anywhere in the first
Yeah.
place. But what was it like? Let's talk about Blood Wizard for a little while. What was it like being, because you're the founder, right?
Well, I'm
Or
a
one of the
co-founder.
founders,
One of the founders.
co-founder.
Yeah.
Yeah. So of Blood Wizard. And did you see just a huge increase during COVID of skateboard sales?
Yeah, I mean, not a huge increase. Okay, the first thing that happened was, we were doing all these contests and all that stuff, and then it just dropped. I didn't do an event for 18 months, dude. From going
Mm.
from 3 a month, okay, on the road, to nothing, and just everyone. Okay, everyone. And yes, we did see a big push in sales, but the hard part was no one could go anywhere. So the factory would push out and ship as many as they could, but then the truck driver couldn't deliver the new blanks because the truck driver
Oh,
couldn't drive and stuff. So we sold out of everything, and then we were creating new graphics and new shapes and new apparel and stuff, and we would sell out immediately because everyone's just at home ordering online. But the UPS drivers, the delivery drivers, the drivers from all of this, the stuff, that all the wood coming from Canada or Mexico, was it was really tough to keep up with the demand. We couldn't keep up with demand because the infrastructure wasn't able to. So
yeah.
what it did help us do was solidify our following. Okay,
Okay.
because we were able to do a lot of more social media posts. Social media exploded because everyone was at home. So we were able to do a lot more posts of all these clips, historical clips, new stuff, new videos. And it really got a lot of new followers for us. And social media is it's a great thing, but it's also a kind of weird thing. Skateboarders don't
Yeah.
care about likes and this and that. They care about frontside grinds and getting that tail slide and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and landing the air. But social media is a part of our world now, and it is going to continue to be, and it's going to keep going up and up. And it is a necessary part of any business, and as
Mm.
a business, we need to sell boards and apparel to be able to buy more blanks, make more boards, make more shirts, make more hats. And just to be transparent for everyone out there, you know most of the money that skateboard companies make goes directly to the riders or making product. That's where it
Yeah.
goes. Okay. Big the days of the Powell Peralta and Santa Cruz, and where the owners of the stuff were making millions of dollars, those days are gone. Okay. the
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
the money goes back into making more boards, making more shirts, making more hats, shipping them out, and sending riders where they want to go. That's a big priority for Blood Wizard, is we send riders wherever they want to go. You want to go to Vegas,
Yeah.
you want to go to Hawaii, you want to go to Canada, you want to go to a contest, you want to go film at a pool, wherever you want to go, and our team captain and filmer, Chris Gregson, kind of runs it with, Toad Dincho and our CEO, Justin Visser. And we have these
Mm.
plans that kind of go in together. You know what I mean? And they just kind of run with it. And, you have to let, you know, these team riders go where they want. Traveling has always been a huge part of skateboarding and always will be. You could
Yeah.
live in Bondi and you're skating that bowl, and that's great, but skating new stuff is always a big part of skateboarding and always will be. That's why skateboard
Yeah.
companies will always do tours and demos and contests all over the world, because you can't just be pigeonholed into skating one little spot. You have to go off and skate different things and different spots. Otherwise, it just kind of becomes stale. And you want that. You want to ride something new.
Yeah, 100%. You want. I think it comes down to wanting to test yourself against different terrain. Like you
Uh-huh.
can skate the same thing every day, as you say, and it becomes stagnant. But you also become a little bit stagnant, a little bit
Yeah,
complacent. You're not driven to try new stuff because you get
yeah,
comfortable in that atmosphere. So yeah,
sure.
completely agree with you how important travel is to skateboarding.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And as far as Blood Wizard, we have a medium sized team, and like we have some pros. We make four boards, but we're not a huge company. We're not like a Palo Peralta or Santa Cruz who's pumping out 5, 8, 10,000 boards a month. We do a run, we sell them out, we make the money. Do the next run, do the
Yeah.
next run, and just create videos. And, some of our guys go to contests, but we're not a big contest company. And that doesn't matter so much. If a skater wants to go to the contest, that's fine, or if they want to film a video, if they want to film a trick. What matters is, that they're dedicated to the brand. They want to be a part of it, and skateboarding is, people are going to quit teams. People are going to go on and off teams. That just happens.
Yeah.
Your stuff aligns with companies. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you got a life hammer. Maybe you're not. I mean, I was really surprised to see about Chris Russell leaving Creature after 15
I
years.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he must
That
have got a really great offer from Tanabata. It's a new company, and I'm just happy for him. That's always going to happen. You're never going to have, the only team that was forever like that was the Bones Brigade, right? I mean, even those
yeah.
guys, like we talked about earlier, nothing lasts forever, and a team can't
And that
stay
was
together.
and that was only a decade,
Yeah, yeah.
Like for the core team to be together. Well, unless you take Cab into it, he still
Well,
runs for
that's his
Cal,
only sponsor. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
We have
that's
a
a
great
that's a
team, and
different animal.
yeah, we got a great team and a lot of good people, and we're based out of Northern California, and then most of our team lives in Southern California. And we got a few
Okay.
guys, and we got some Japanese riders, and it doesn't really matter where you live. Everyone gets on a plane and travels so much now, anyway, these days. But it's just Blood Wizard was born out of an idea, and then we didn't even know what we were doing. It was just born one night in the Mission in San Francisco, and then we just kind of started it, and then the ball started rolling, and then it just picked up steam. And then here we are 14 years, 13 or 14 years later, still making
Mm.
boards, still just trying to, just like any small business, just trying to hang on. Okay, just trying to
Yeah,
go day
that's
to day, and just trying to be, like even these smaller companies, like you see, like Death Breath or Device from Australia. There's ebbs and
mm.
flows. Sometimes you sell a lot of boards, sometimes you don't. That's just part of the skateboard industry, and that's just things you
Yeah.
got to, kind of take into account.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, everything business-wise within skateboarding doesn't matter if you're making wheels, apparel, decks, trucks, whatever it may be. Everything's kind of low at the
Yeah,
moment, right?
yeah,
Like it's not at any sort of peak era
yeah.
of skateboard. There's a lot of people doing it, but yeah, it doesn't. I think there are so many companies and so many companies doing different things that there's
And
so
pros.
many.
There's
It's like
more skateboard pros than there ever has been now, because everyone's so
yeah,
good now. I mean, when you went pro, it used to be just like, oh my God, that was like one or three, five, 10 guys a year in the whole skateboard industry
Yeah.
would go pro. Now, like 50 to 90 riders go pro every year. That's a lot. You know what I mean?
That's a ton. How do you guys actually? That's interesting. How do you guys decide who's pro
Well, our
on
team
Blood Wizard?
manager, and dude, it's really organic. Okay, we're not like planning like this dude's going pro on Tuesday. You know what I mean?
Mm,
It's a really organic thing, And as a rider, I never went pro. I was just a sponsored rider for many years. But it's like kind of when you like when that rider breaks through, like when they have a really good video part, maybe they won a bunch of contests, maybe they did 5, 6 tours in a row, you know what I mean? And they're just kind of maybe not at their peak, but they're like on their way to the peak. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like something like that. Some pros, they turn pro, they peak, and then it's boom. Some riders, they turn pro and they just keep going. It doesn't matter that they're pro. They're just like, look at
Mm,
Tom Shar. He turned pro and he turned pro like 3 years ago and he's gnarlier than he's ever been and he's still going.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, as like a business, we kind of talk about it like, okay, are we going to give them a graphic? Then we talk about it. And then just like every company, you want to do it secretively. You want to make it a surprise. You see all these videos of when, skaters go pro, they do it in a restaurant or they do it, at a contest or
Yeah.
something. Then
Yeah.
you get a bunch of boards made. You get like 20 or 30 boards made just for that day, and you go and you pile
Yeah.
them all on and throw them all on, and maybe the rider's parents there, or, they're all the rest of the team, and you make a big deal about it.
Mm,
And that's a fun thing.
yeah.
I've helped turn 4 riders pro that I've been there, and we have 6 or 8 riders that are pro on our team now, and there'll be a couple more coming up in the next couple years. But really, it just kind of happens organically. You don't really pick a date and set it. You just, maybe some of the bigger companies do. I don't know, but you really just kind of, it's just a feeling. It's a gut feeling. Like, damn, this rider's ready to go. Let's maybe next month plan a trip, and we'll just see what happens. And then you order the boards, and then the last guy we turned pro was just, all right, it's next week. Boom, and then you just do it.
Yeah.
And
Right. Yeah.
and then usually you see a surge in board sales for the next month of that rider, and then it kind of wherever
Mm,
it goes. But and it's in any skater's life, as any athlete's life, going pro is a life defining moment. You know what I mean? And I'm
yeah.
just
Of
happy
course.
we could give a lot of our riders opportunities to do that, whether it's with a pro
Sure.
board or trip, money, whatever it is. And it makes me feel good as a founder of a company to be able to help with that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, that's yeah. I mean, that's great insight because I was always sort of wondering, like, who makes this decision? Is it a team decision? Is it
Like the
the
team manager and the
uppers?
owner. Usually, like the team
Yeah.
manager and the owner make the final decision. All right, this dude's going pro next month. We're gonna make it so it's like on a contest weekend or on a tour, or we'll be there. But most of the time, the rider doesn't know. The rider will have a feeling, but the actual day, the rider doesn't know. They usually
Yeah.
like
Right.
when Birdhouse turned Grayson pro. I mean, he'd been pro already, but when they gave him a board, when Birdhouse gave him a board, he didn't know that day, and he's like, boom, now here's Tony Hawk giving you your board that's already made. It's like that feeling is
Yeah.
just irreplaceable.
Yeah. Of course. Of course. And so, what's in the future for you? What's directly in your
Well, I got to go
sights
to
for
work
the
tomorrow,
next?
Damo. Back to the
Ah.
grind is all. You got to
Yeah.
keep going. Skateboarding, I just been passing it on to my son, and also just skating as much as I can. Sacramento, you guys come out to Sacramento. There's a ton of parks here, more than I can,
Yeah.
hit. There's 15 parks here or something like that. So skating as much as I can, but life hammers and this and that. MCing as well. I'm still working for that French company Feast, and still working
Hmm.
for some local companies. So I don't MC as much as I did, and I'd love to come to the Bondi one, but fortunately, with a job here, it's hard to take 2 weeks off just to go to Australia for one day. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, 100%.
continuing my MC stuff, playing in a band, doing that, just being a dad, and helping with Blood Wizard, and just being a skateboard collector, and just as you get older, just being a part of skateboard. I'm just so thankful. As I look back, all the places and contests and events and places I've got to go, I'm so thankful for each and every one of you out there who are watching this, who've helped me out, including you, Damo, and given me a chance to go, to go where I've gone in so many different places. And it's just, I'm just going to kind of continue to do more of the same. Of course, I won't be able to do as much as it, but I don't think anyone is, unless you're really one of the top guys, and, especially like a really hard part of it is, you know, money sucks, but you need it to survive, and the travel
Yeah.
schedule. Travel schedule's
Yeah.
tough, unless you're a young rider with somebody paying your way. Traveling is harder, and just life is a lot harder now. And so just trying to, stay focused and have a good time and keep believing in skateboarding.
That's beautiful, man. Like, yeah, very well said. Well, Emile, I think we should wrap it up there on that
Yeah, I'm
on
almost at
that
the back of
positive note.
bro.
All right, buddy. Well, it was great to talk to you, and hopefully we can catch up in person real
Yeah, it'll
soon.
happen. It'll happen. And hey, I just want to thank everyone out there watching. Thank you so much for all you've done for me, what you've done for skateboarding, and especially all the Australian crew out there, the Bondi crew, all the riders. There's too many to name, but you, Damo, Dean, Marcel, everybody in that Bondi crew. Thank you so much for, inviting me, having me out there, and just being a part of the Australian skateboard scene. I'm just so happy to have been a little blip on the screen, and hopefully I can get out there and do more. And, just thank you guys, and make sure you got your budgie smugglers on. All right. Down there at the Bondi Bowl, man.
All right, Emile. Thank you so much, man. We'll catch up real soon.
Thank you, Damo. And we'll talk soon, man. Appreciate you.